Hey everyone, it's December 23rd. That means it's officially winter. The firewood's already been stocked up, the wood stove is blazing in the background, and that means it's time for my favorite wintertime activity that's not fly fishing, tying flies. The pattern that I'm going to be tying today is an olive jigged leech. I caught a ton of fish on this pattern last year. It produced when a lot of other things wouldn't, especially on really cold days in the bottom of slow, deep pools. Unlike many of my other jig streamers, I found that this fly produces equally as well in both bright sunny conditions as well as overcast cloudy ones. Here's some attributes that make this thing a fish catching machine. First of all, this pine squirrel tail provides unmatched movement. Even when the fly is sitting still resting, it's always moving, always undulating in the water. This big bead and the Perdigon style slim body makes it sink really fast to get you to the bottom of those deep holes where fish are sitting in the wintertime. And this ostrich collar just adds a little bit more bulk and helps keep it moving as it's in the water as well. If you like today's video, please subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you on board for all of our future videos. I've got my eggnog and my candy cane ready. We're ready to tie us some leeches. Alright y'all, we're going to get to tying this jigged leech. This hook that I've got in the vise is a size 8 regular jig hook. It's got also a 4.6 millimeter tungsten slotted bead on there. The bead is black nickel. I've also done them in black. That works just as well. The thread that I'm using today is UTC Ultra 70 denier. This is olive green. Normally I would do this in just a regular olive, but you can see I'm almost out. This olive green will work just fine as well. I'm tying this today from the perspective of the tyer. In other words, you're seeing what I'm seeing. I've tried to do this to make it as easy as possible for you to replicate the steps of this fly. I think it's helpful to see it from this perspective. The original version of this pattern was put out by a guy named Landon Mayer. I actually met Landon in person. We talked about his jigged leeches. He fishes them a lot, catches a lot of good fish all around the country on them. So I decided I wanted to tie some up. I did change a couple things. We'll talk about that as we go. I'm going to go ahead and start my thread right here behind the bead. As I'm wrapping my thread back, I'm twisting it counterclockwise so that it flattens out. And the idea of that is similar to how I would do with the Perdigon. I'm just trying to keep that body as nice and flat and smoothly tapered as I can. Now that I've gotten back here, I'm going to go ahead and tie my crystal flash in. Now this is just olive crystal flash. This is nothing special. I've got a full strand here. I'm going to take it and double it over and just get it on both sides of my thread. And now that I've got it doubled over, I can very easily attach that just by wrapping around like that. As I'm going forward now, I'm twisting that thread counterclockwise again, trying to keep it flat. And I'm just going to work on building up a slight taper. You don't have to go crazy with this. This is 70 denier olive thread. If I put too much tension on this, it's going to end up popping my thread, which I don't want to do. So I'm just putting light tension on, working my way forward and back, building up a little bit of a taper. And then once I get that taper how I want it, I'm going to go ahead and tie that thread off with a half hitch so that I can use my rotary function of my vise. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Working my way front again. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap between the end of my taper and my bead. We'll talk about that in a little while. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and throw that half hitch. That's going to keep me from coming loose as I use the rotary function. And I'm going to use my bobbin cradle. Now I've got my two folded over sections of crystal flash. Again, I don't want to go crazy with the tension. So you can see I've stretched it up a little bit. But I'm going to use light tension, just enough to keep it so that it flattens out, but not enough to break. I'm also watching that hook point every time it comes around, because if the hook point catches those strands, they will break. If they get side by side as you wrap forward, that's perfectly fine, not a big deal. I'm going to wrap this forward until I get to the end of my taper, just about here, and then I'm going to tie it off. So I'm taking my thread off the bobbin cradle, moving it back, and I'm going to wrap my thread up a little bit and just catch those two strands. Couple in front, couple behind. Trim it off close. Now this next step is where it differs from what Landon originally did. He used Loctite super glue. He brushed that onto the body of the Crystal Flash that we just wrapped in order to keep it so that it doesn't break. I tried that. I did what he said in his video, and I don't know if I did it wrong or what, but I had a lot of them break after catching a couple fish, so I decided to change it a little bit. I've got just some regular Solares or Solares UV, like I would use to coat Perdigon bodies, and I'm going to coat just like I would with the Perdigon, starting all the way at the back and working my way front. I'm going to coat that body that I just wrapped. And once I hit that with my UV light, that's going to give me a super durable, really good looking fly body that's not going to break when I get a fish on it. So I got my UV light on it here, spin it a little bit front and back, get it good and cured up. Now I've got a bulletproof body that's not going to break, and it's going to look good too. Now for the tail of this, I mentioned I use Pine Squirrel, but I've got a couple different shades of olive. This is Sculpin Olive. This is Standard Olive. Honestly, either one of these will work. The important thing is you want to make sure that it's Pine Squirrel because those strips are cut thinner than a standard Zonker strip would be. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of my Zonker strips out. I'm going to get my strip, kind of stroke it back here. I'm stroking this back. And now what I'm going to do is, you can see I kind of got a weird thing here on the end, so I'm going to trim that off. And I'm going to strip some of these fibers back. Not a lot, just about 1/8 of an inch. Give me a good tie-in surface. Now that I've got my fiber stripped back, I'm ready to attach this. But before I do, I want to take my thread and I want to build up just a flat spot here. Not really big, but just a nice flat spot at the end of my taper to give me a good tie-in point for that olive Pine Squirrel. So I've got my fiber stroked back. I'm going to just lay this right on top and get the end of that hide just about to touch the bead. I don't want to go crazy up over it. And what I'm doing right here, I'm going to just do a pinch wrap where I have my strip aligned on top, just a gentle pinch wrap. And now I'm going to tie down more firmly. Again, not going crazy, but just enough to keep it in place. Once I get it tied down, I'm going to go ahead and tie up to the bead. And that way I've got everything just how I want it. Alright, at this point I'm going to trim my Pine Squirrel. Landon says he goes less than 2 inches. I usually go more than 2 inches. That way when I'm on the water I can adjust it. But I don't want to go short. Alright, so I've got 2 inches plus a little bit there. That's going to get me close. Now that I've got that, I'm ready to go ahead and attach my ostrich. My ostrich, you can see I've got 3 fibers here. They're all currently connected where I peeled them off the main stem. But I'm going to cut those back, and then I'm going to strip them back so that just the stem part is exposed on all 3 of those. I like to do at least 2, sometimes 3, because it gives you a little bit fuller collar. Now that I've got that stripped back how I want it, I'm going to lay these on the side of my hook shank, and I'm going to go about a 45-degree angle to get started. I'm just tying those back to about where the backmost portion of my thread wraps on my Pine Squirrel stopped, and trim the stems off. Okay, for this part I'm not going to use a rotary function. I just hold these up, kind of get them all oriented, aligned the same way, and then just start wrapping them forward. I can do multiple wraps of these over top of each other. It's not going to hurt anything. I like having the multiple fibers on here, so that way I can go ahead and get a nice full collar and not have to keep attaching more and more and going back over it. So now I've got that on there, a couple wraps in front, couple wraps behind. Trim it nice and close to the bead. I'll stroke any fibers that are kind of going the wrong direction back, and I'm ready to whip finish. When I whip finish this again, I'll do a 4 or 5 turn whip finish, but I'm not putting a lot of tension on there because I don't want to pop that thread. I trim it off right close to my collar, and we're good to go. All right, there you have it. A nice, durable olive Pine Squirrel leech. It's going to look great in the water, going to have a lot of movement, and going to catch me a lot of fish. I mentioned that this was a size 8. I'll tie these also in 10s and 12s. I might go down to a 14, but that's probably about as small as I would go. I want this to look like a bigger food item while still maintaining that slim profile and having the ability to sink quick with that heavy bead. Let's bring this fly over from the tying vise to the test tank. If you haven't seen my video about making a test tank to test your flies, I'll put the link right here. It's a great way to see what your flies look like underwater and what action they might have, as well as a lot of other things also. This is what the leech looks like swimming in the current. You can see that even when I'm not actually moving the fly, the pine squirrel tail never stops moving. It constantly gives action to the fly, even when it's sitting still. Here's what it looks like when I'm jigging it. You can see no matter what I'm doing with this fly, it's always moving, it's always looking like it's alive, it's gonna catch you some fish. Now that you've tied your own olive jig leech, go out, give it a try this winter, let me know how it does for you. Remember, fish it slow, fish it on the bottom, twitch it slowly, jig it a little bit, you're gonna catch some fish. Thanks for watching this brook to river fly tying tutorial. I hope you do well on your fly, and now that you've seen me tie some olive jig leeches, you tie some olive jig leeches and go catch some fish with them. Bye.